Imagine for a second that you are flying like really high up in the air in a passenger jet.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
Right. So you're looking out the window, and right below you are the freezing, jagged, snow-capped peaks of the Himalayas.
Oh, wow. Yeah, just this harsh lunar landscape.
Exactly. Solid rock and ice. But then you look out to the southeast, and the mountains just drop away, like completely.
Yeah,
And spreading out below you, stretching hundreds of miles all the way to the sea, is this immense, shimmering, green expanse.
yeah. And from the air, it doesn't even look solid, does it?
No, not at all. It looks like a living, breathing creature, just constantly shifting and pulsing with water.
It really is one of the most stunning visual and, well, geological contrasts anywhere on the planet. I mean,
Yeah.
you have the highest, most rigid, immovable rock formations on Earth bleeding directly into one of the flattest, most fluid and active landscapes imaginable.
And that shimmering green expanse is the Bengal Delta, specifically the nation of Bangladesh.
Yes.
Today, we are taking a deep dive into Willem Van Schendel's incredibly eye-opening book, A History of Bangladesh.
It's such a fantastic read.
It really is. And our mission here is to completely flip the script on how you probably think about this part of the world. Because if your only exposure to this region is through modern media tropes.
Right, the tragic headlines.
Exactly. The poverty, cyclones, massive floods. If that's all you know, you are missing one of the most remarkable stories of human ingenuity and adaptation ever recorded.
Oh, without a doubt.
We are looking at how the physical geography of this immense delta didn't just, casually influence the history of the people there. It fundamentally dictated their entire social, agricultural, and political evolution.
Yeah, and to really grasp the history of this region, we have to throw out almost every conventional assumption we hold about how a civilization is supposed to develop.
Right.
Because the core thesis of Van Schendel's work is that Bangladesh is a society entirely defined by a perennially moving frontier between land and water. The ground beneath their feet is literally never still.
Never still. I want to break down the mechanics of that moving frontier. Because to understand how the land shapes the people, we first have to understand how the land itself is physically created year after year.
Which brings us back to that view from the airplane.
Yes, because one of the most mind-bending concepts in the source material is this idea that Bangladesh is essentially the Himalayas, just flattened out.
I know it sounds like a poetic exaggeration, right? But geologically, it's the literal truth.
Which is wild.
It really is. Every single spring, the snow on the Himalayas begins to melt. And that icy water gathers immense kinetic energy as it sweeps down the steepest mountains on Earth.
It's picking up speed.
Exactly. And as it rushes downward, it acts like giant liquid sandpaper, violently carving away microscopic particles of rock and soil.
So it's just shredding the mountain.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
But by the time these river systems reach the flat lowlands of the Bengal Delta, they lose their velocity. The water, well, it slows down.
Because it's hitting the flat plains.
Right. And as the kinetic energy drops, the rivers can no longer carry all that suspended material, so they drop the particles. They deposit the silt.
Right.
And this is the age-old geological engine that built the entire territory of Bangladesh. And it continues to push the coastline further out into the Indian Ocean every single year.
And the scale of this process is genuinely hard to wrap your head around. I mean, almost all the runoff from the highest mountain range on Earth has to pass through this one narrow deltaic funnel.
It's a massive bottleneck.
It is. The sources put the number at 650 billion cubic meters of water being discharged annually.
Which is just a staggering figure.
It's incomprehensible. And it arises primarily through three river giants. You have the Ganges, which is known locally as the Padma, coming in from the west, the Meghna entering from the east, and from the north, the mighty Brahmaputra, or the Jamuna.
And, when we say the word river in this context, we need to completely discard the image of a typical European or North American waterway.
Right, like a neat little river with grassy banks and a bridge over it.
Exactly. Completely forget that. The Brahmaputra alone spreads out to a width of 18 kilometers in some places.
Wait, 18 kilometers?
18 kilometers, yeah.
If I am standing on one bank of the river, I literally cannot see the other side. That isn't a river, that is a moving freshwater ocean.
It really is. And that moving ocean is carrying an unfathomable amount of earth. These rivers transport roughly 1 billion metric tons of Himalayan earth every single year.
1 billion?
Yes. Most of it flows out to create the world's largest submarine fan, the Bengal fan, which hides deep under the Indian Ocean. but millions of tons of it stay on the land.
So it's like the river system is this giant geological 3D printer.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, it's constantly using Himalayan silt as its filament to literally print and reprint the country.
That is a highly accurate analogy, provided we recognize that this 3D printer is incredibly chaotic.
Oh, sure. It's not a neat print job.
Not at all. The
Yeah.
printing process is not uniform. As these massive river channels fill up with their own deposited silt, the riverbeds actually become shallower.
They choke on their own dirt.
Exactly. They choke on their own sediment. Eventually, the sheer volume of water violently breaches the banks, seeking a steeper, faster route to the sea, and carves an entirely new path across the landscape. So the land itself is inherently impermanent.
So if the land is constantly being printed, erased, and reprinted, what is it actually like for a human being to live inside that machine?
Well, it requires constant adaptation.
Right, because the environment has these extreme seasonal mood swings. The book describes it as the Janus face of nature, two completely different personalities depending on the time of year.
Yeah, and understand that split personality, we have to look at the three distinct forms of water that dominate the delta. You have river water, rainwater, and seawater.
Okay.
Now, in the winter months, the environment is incredibly benign. The skies are a quiet blue, the massive rivers shrink back down into their central beds, and the seawater from the Bay of Bengal gently trickles into the lower delta.
It sounds lovely, actually. Very nurturing.
It is. It's a very calm environment. But then the summer arrives.
Right. The monsoon.
Yes. And it's not just the Himalayan snowmelt swelling the rivers. It's
Mhm.
the monsoon rain.
And I want to pause here because when we say rain, we aren't talking about, like, a heavy afternoon thunderstorm.
No, no.
The numbers are staggering. Just across the border from Bangladesh is a town in India called Cherrapunji, which receives a mind-boggling 11 meters of rain a year. 11 meters.
It's hard to even visualize that much water falling from the sky.
It's like a 3-story building made of rain.
Right. And combine that torrential vertical rainfall with the swelling 18-kilometer wide rivers, and then factor in the sea, specifically the tidal bores and cyclonic surges pushing dense seawater inland through the Sundarbans mangrove forests.
So water from all three directions.
Exactly. The landscape completely transforms. Up to 20% of the entire country goes underwater every single summer.
See, think about your own country or your own state for a second. If 20% of your landmass went underwater every summer, that would be framed as a full-blown apocalyptic crisis.
Oh, absolutely.
You would be calling in emergency services, the military, everything. But the people living in the Bengal Delta don't view it that way.
Not at all.
If you are a farmer in this region, you aren't praying to avoid the flood. You're actually hoping for the flood. You just want the right kind of flood.
Yeah, and this really forces us to re-examine how we define the word disaster. In the Delta, floods are not inherently negative events.
Right.
In fact, a rain or river flood that inundates the land gently for a few days or weeks is actively welcomed. It deposits a fresh layer of that nutrient-rich Himalayan silt directly onto the fields, which practically guarantees a massive bumper harvest for the farmers.
So they need it.
Yes, the traditional agricultural cycle relies entirely on this annual inundation. A disaster only occurs when the water behaves in ways the society hasn't adapted to.
Meaning when it's a violently fast surge or when it just refuses to drain away.
Exactly those two scenarios. A violent cyclonic surge from the sea, like the horrific 1970s cyclone that killed hundreds of thousands of people, is a disaster because of its raw kinetic force.
It's basically a bulldozer.
Right. It physically tears apart infrastructure, uproots trees, and drowns lives. Alternatively, a prolonged inundation is a slow-motion disaster.
Like when the water just sits there.
Yes. If the water stays standing for 65 days, as it did during the massive floods of 1998, it suffocates the roots of crops, breeds waterborne diseases, and devastates the national economy.
Wow.
But the regular, expected seasonal flood, that is the absolute lifeblood of the region.
And the way the population has historically adapted to this lifeblood is fascinating. There is a specific agricultural invention detailed in the sources that completely blew my mind.
Oh, the floating rice.
Yes. Floating rice or jalladhan. Because I was wondering, if 20% of the country is under several meters of water for weeks, how on earth do you grow a staple crop? Doesn't the rice just drown?
Well, a standard variety of rice certainly would.
Right.
But jalladhan is a marvel of biological adaptation. As the summer floodwaters begin to rise across the plains, the stems of this specific floating rice plant elongate with astonishing rapidity.
They just shoot up.
They do. They can grow up to 5 or 6 meters long, entirely driven by the biological imperative to keep the grain-bearing head of the plant floating above the rising water line.
Wait, so the rice is literally just outrunning the flood.
Essentially, yes.
It's treading water 5 meters deep, anchoring itself to the submerged soil, while the top of the plant floats on the surface like a lily pad.
It creates a completely surreal landscape. You have farmers navigating their fields in wooden boats, harvesting the tops of the rice plants from the surface of a temporary lake.
Which brings up a massive logistical question. If I'm a farmer harvesting my floating rice from a boat, where do I actually sleep at night?
That is the million-dollar question.
Because you can't exactly pour a heavy concrete foundation or build a deep basement in a swamp that's destined to be submerged. How do you physically root a society in a place like that?
The simple answer is, well, you don't, or rather, you avoid putting down rigid, permanent roots. And this leads us to a fascinating sociological and historical concept known as the elusive village. Because if we look at traditional global history, human beings almost instinctively build settlements that project permanence and immobility.
Right. Think about a traditional European village, or even your own neighborhood. You expect the foundation to be solid. You build a central square, a heavy stone church, maybe a defensive wall.
Yes.
Everything is constructed out of the heaviest, most durable materials available, designed to sit in one exact geographic coordinate for 1,000 years.
But if you try to build a heavy stone wall in an active delta, you are fighting a losing battle against geology.
The mud's just going to swallow it.
Exactly. The silt beneath that heavy stone might simply wash away next season, or the river might shift its course entirely, leaving your bustling port city stranded miles away in a dry swamp.
Oh, man.
So over centuries, the delta villages evolved to be scattered, modular hamlets rather than tightly clustered stone towns.
Modular hamlets, I like that.
Yeah, the homesteads are perched on slightly elevated plinths or mounds of packed earth. And when the moderate summer floods arrive, these mounds turn into literal islands, and the inhabitants travel between them by boat.
And the houses built on these mounds are intentionally constructed from lightweight materials, bamboo, jute, mud, woven thatch.
Very easy to work with.
Right, materials that can be easily disassembled, loaded onto a boat, moved and rebuilt when the river inevitably changes its mind and erodes the mound. It's an architecture of impermanence.
It really is.
If traditional Western history is built on stone castles and heavy anchors, the history of the Bengal Delta is built on agility, like a fleet of nimble boats, always ready to move when the tide changes.
And furthermore, that physical agility fundamentally shaped their social structures.
Oh, really? How so?
Well, because these villages aren't clustered tightly together behind a shared defensive wall, and because the inhabitants are constantly shifting locations, they didn't develop those rigid, authoritarian, feudal hierarchies.
Like having one single, all-powerful village headman dictating the law.
It's exactly. Instead, the historical record shows a much more fluid, egalitarian social dynamic. Power and governance were shared among continually shifting alliances of family groups and hamlet leaders.
Okay, but if I am a king or an emperor trying to run a centralized state, that sounds like an absolute nightmare.
Oh, it was a massive headache for them.
Right. How do you govern, let alone tax, a population that can literally pack up their houses, load them onto a boat, and float away if they don't like your decrees?
You've just identified the central political tension of the region's entire history. Centralized states, sweeping empires, and colonial powers have perpetually struggled to control, map, and tax this flexible, elusive population.
Because they can't pin them down.
Right. The fluid environment fundamentally frustrated imperial ambitions. The rivers, quite literally, dictated the fates of kings and empires.
And the sources tell an incredible story about the city of Gaur that perfectly illustrates this mechanism. Back in the 15th century, Gaur is this massive, thriving capital city. We are talking about an urban population of 200,000 people.
Which was huge for that time.
Huge. It had broad, paved streets, grand courtyards, ornamental tiles, and a massive river port handling international trade. It was the crown jewel of an empire.
It was undeniably a true metropolis of the ancient world. But its entire economic and political existence depended on its geographic position alongside the main channel of the Ganges River.
Right.
And remember what we discussed earlier, that these rivers are a 3D printer that never stops, and they constantly choke on their own sediment.
So what actually happened? Does the river just slowly drift away over centuries?
No, actually, it can happen shockingly fast. As the Ganges deposited more and more silt into its own bed near Gaur, the riverbed rose higher and higher.
So the water has nowhere to go.
Right. And eventually, during a major flood season, the sheer volume of water found it easier to break through the banks and carve a completely new, lower elevation channel miles away.
Wow.
This process is called river avulsion. The Ganges shifted its course entirely away from the capital.
So the ships couldn't reach the port anymore, which instantly kills the trade.
Ex-
But it's so much worse than just an economic collapse, because when the main river moved, it left behind its old channels around the city. And these channels became stagnant, dying pools of water that turned into massive swamps.
And we know what comes with swamps in that climate.
Mosquitoes.
Yes.
Those warm, stagnant swamps became the perfect breeding grounds. What followed was a devastating outbreak of malaria. So you have a sudden economic collapse followed immediately by an epidemiological nightmare.
It was a 1-2 punch.
Yeah, and by the year 1575, this grand imperial city of 200,000 people was permanently abandoned. It became a ghost town swallowed by the jungle.
And it serves as a stark historical reminder that human political power is incredibly fragile when pitted against active geological forces.
Yeah.
And this wasn't an isolated incident. You see this dynamic repeatedly throughout the region's history. Like in the 1780s, a massive earthquake altered the topography just enough to force the mighty Brahmaputra River into a completely new channel.
Just overnight.
Yes, in an instant. Deeply established trade centers along the old route were financially wiped out, and entirely new commercial hubs had to be formed from scratch along the new banks.
That has to mess with the psychology of the ruling class. I mean, if you are a king and a river can just casually delete your capital city or instantly bankrupt your trading hubs, how do you project authority? Do you just accept that you are at the mercy of the water?
Well, the historical evidence suggests they absolutely did not accept it.
They fought it?
They tried to. We can see their psychological reaction and really their denial in the archaeological record. The Pala dynasty, which ruled the Bengal region for several centuries, built massive, towering brick monuments right on the active floodplain.
Right on the mud.
Yes. The sprawling ruins of Piharpur are a prime example. Now, traditionally, when archaeologists in Europe or the Middle East uncover a towering, heavy brick monument, they interpret it as a clear projection of the state's immense strength, wealth, and permanence.
Like the Roman Colosseum or the pyramids, it's a statement. It says, look at the size of my foundation, I am undeniably powerful.
Exactly. But in the specific context of the Bengal Delta, modern historians view these exceptionally heavy brick monuments quite differently.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they are often seen as a sign of deep insecurity and weakness.
Interesting.
They were desperate attempts by rulers to project an illusion of permanence onto a landscape and a populace that simply refused to sit still.
Oh, wow.
And the local population, whose entire culture, agriculture, and architecture were perfectly attuned to impermanence, agility, and the realities of the water, well, they likely viewed these massive brick structures with a sense of irony as they slowly sank into the muddy deltaic soil.
It's almost a form of political theater, isn't it? Like a king screaming, I am in charge, at a river that is actively washing away the legs of his throne.
That's a great way to put it. It was a fundamental clash of worldviews. The imperial center craved stasis, reliable taxation, neat lines on a map, and rigid borders.
But the delta environment demanded flexibility, constant adaptation, and movement.
Exactly. And the Delta always won. Ultimately, the state had to adapt to the moving frontier of water and land, not the other way around.
I think this completely upends how we are taught to think about strength and survival. We are so socially conditioned to believe that strength means building the thickest wall, pouring the deepest concrete foundation, and resisting the storm at all costs.
Right, fighting nature.
Yeah, but the people of the Bengal Delta prove over thousands of years that true resilience is the exact opposite. True strength is the floating rice outrunning the flood.
Yes.
It's the elusive village packing up and moving overnight. It's the ability to bend, to dismantle, to rebuild, and to move in harmony with the current rather than letting the kinetic force of the water break you.
And if we pull back and connect this historical reality to the broader global picture of where we are today, this ceases to be just a fascinating, isolated history lesson. It becomes profoundly, urgently relevant.
Oh, absolutely.
Because as global climate change accelerates, weather patterns become more extreme, and sea levels continue to rise, the traditional rigid cities of the Western world, the ones built on the stubborn illusion of absolute geological permanence are facing an existential crisis.
You see it happening right now. Coastal cities are pouring billions and billions of dollars into massive concrete seawalls to fight back the ocean. They're trying to hold the line against the water.
Yep.
But when you look at it through the lens of Bangladesh's history, building those concrete walls feels an awful lot like the Pelega kings building sinking brick monuments in the mud.
It's a refusal to adapt.
Exactly. So if you are listening to this and you often find yourself feeling overwhelmed by the sheer pace of rapid, unpredictable change in our modern world, whether that's environmental change, technological shifts, or social upheaval, there is a masterclass in survival right here in the history of the Bengal Delta.
The main takeaway is that permanence is often an illusion, and rigidity is a vulnerability. Perhaps the entire world will soon have to learn what it means to live on a perennially moving frontier. The ancient, flexible, amphibious blueprint of the Bengal Delta isn't just a regional curiosity of the past.
No.
As we look at the trajectory of our changing planet, that blueprint might just be the required survival guide for the future of human civilization.
It is a profound shift in perspective. As we face a future where the waters, both literal and metaphorical, are rising, maybe our best hope isn't to build a heavier anchor to hold us in place. Maybe it's time we learn how to build a more nimble boat. Keep that image of the shimmering, fluid expanse beneath the Himalayas in your mind, the land that refuses to stay still. Keep exploring, and we'll see you on the next deep dive.